Welcome back to the podcast, guys. This is the OC Real Estate Playbook. Hope you guys are all doing well today. As always, it's your host, Hunter Rener, here again with my dad and broker, Pablo Rener. How are you doing today, Pablo?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Are you looking forward to it?
Yeah, behind the scenes, guys, we've had a couple of giggles. So this is attempt number 10, I want to say. But
we'll get this.
Yeah, well, nonetheless, let's get into today's episode, which is the burning question that some of you sellers may have is, should you renovate your home before selling? So off the cuff, how would you give a definitive answer to that?
I think, so if you're thinking of renovating, if you're already asking yourself that question, then the answer is yes. I think if you know your house is beautiful, if you have a great eye for decor, if the house has been recently remodeled, any of those things, if you were to say, hey, I can show a stranger this house and they would think it's really nice, then you don't have to remodel. But I think people who ask themselves that question, do I need to remodel? More than likely, the answer is going to be yes. Now, with that being said, sometimes a little bit of staging goes a long way. Right? That's why it's important to meet with an agent that knows what buyers are looking for. Like when you hire us, you get a consultation not only with us and with Nikki, but we also bring designers in to help us and say, hey, from a design perspective, is this house good enough that we can just spruce it up with furniture, or do we need to actually get in and do some cosmetic cleanup? But the answer is, if to get more money, yes, we want the buyer to be very emotional when they're walking through a house. What that means is, can they see themselves there, right? It's just, they need to feel like, wow, I would love to live here, right? It's that emotion that they get from looking at a beautiful house, looking at a beautiful car, right? A beautiful dress, a nice suit. When you see a nice suit, a nice tie, you're like, oh my God, I love that, right? And sometimes you'll pick something up and not worry so much about the price, knowing that you really want it. And that's kind of what we're going after with when buyers are looking at houses. We want the buyer to walk through the house and say, oh my God, I could see myself here. I could see the kids playing in that backyard. I could see myself cooking. I could see myself entertaining, whatever it is that buyer's looking for, that the house is turnkey and ready to go. You don't want somebody coming in and saying, oh my God, I love this layout, but I got to redo the kitchen. I have to paint the windows, all that stuff, because as a buyer is doing that, they're discounting the price.
Yeah.
Because they're looking at it, well, okay, I love this neighborhood. I love this, but, right, there's always that but. And that but sometimes ends up costing us a little bit of money. And us, I mean the client, because at the end of the day, we're trying to get the most for our sellers. So we want to make sure that the buyer leaves there with on an emotional high, wanting that house.
Okay. So it seems like you listed a lot of the pros of renovating. What would the cons be of renovating your home?
Obviously, the expense is the biggest one, I would say. If somebody's trying to leave their house, last thing they want to do is invest. We had a client right now that has lived in the house 20 years. They want to sell it. They've never touched the kitchen, right? So the question was, well, do I renovate the kitchen? And I was like, well, yeah, it would be nice to have an updated kitchen. And the wife looked at me, and you could tell she was not real happy with that answer.
Yeah.
Come to find out, well, she's been trying to renovate it. She's been trying to remodel it for the last 5 years. And now in her eyes, she's like, well, I'm spending the money that I would have spent 5 years ago, but I'm not getting to enjoy it. Right. So that's the downside, is a lot of times as a homeowner, you end up having to do the things that you've been putting off, that had you done it 5 years ago, you would have it done, and you would have gotten to enjoy it a little bit longer.
Sure.
Right. So that's the downside, is that from a seller's perspective, if you have to remodel a kitchen, if you have to paint the whole house, whatever you may have to do, change the windows or whatever it is, if it's a big project, a lot of times you have to look at the dollar and say, wow, I'm going to spend 50,000, 100,000, whatever that number is, when I was trying not to spend it, for the last 5 years, because I was going to sell the house. So I think that's the biggest drawback of what people end up contemplating with is making that expense, knowing that they would have done it 5 years ago had they known that it was that important. And with that being said, one of the services that we provide with listing a house with us is we do some of the repairs, we do some of the cosmetic things, we do some of the sprucing up, we do some of the staging, free of cost, right, to our sellers. It's just a cost of doing business for us.
Yeah.
Because we want to try to. No one wants to have to sell their house or want to sell their house and then realize, oh my God, I got to write a check for $50,000 just to bring it up to selling potential. So that's why hiring a company like us, where we come in and we use our concierge service, where we take care of all that for them, not only financially, but also in managing the project, so they're not doing it.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure your background in being an engineer as well as flipping homes helps with the management
It
side.
it does from the management perspective. We do hire designers because I don't have a great eye for design. I know when I see something nice, I'm like, okay, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Right. I know what I want. But to say, oh, I can pick a pillow or I can pick a faucet to make it all come together, that's not my expertise. And that's where the designers come in. We look at a house and we look at the architecture of the house and we say, okay, if the house is a Spanish, if the house is Mediterranean, if the house is modern, if the house is contemporary, right? What does the house have so that we can accessorize it accordingly, whether it's painting a wall, adding some fixtures, renovating the kitchen, whatever that may be.
Like house fashion.
Yes, house fashion, exactly what it is.
So on the topic of, what should I spend my money on to get that return on investment, that ROI, what would be, in your opinion, what would be some of the best projects to go for the highest ROI?
I think the one thing you always look at, and I think everybody, I don't know that anybody could really disagree with me on this. It's not because I came up with it, but it's just a known fact, right? Which is the kitchen and bathrooms. Those are the two things that always you're going to get your money out of it if you put the money into the kitchen, because the kitchen nowadays is the central focal point, not only for if you love to cook, but if you have kids and you have to feed them, right? They can sit around there. Nowadays, when I grew up, the kitchen and the family room, the living room, they were not together, right? The kids were off to their own, doing their own thing. Nowadays, as parents, we want the kids around us, right? We want to see that they're doing their homework. We want to see what they're spending time on. So I think having a kitchen where people can gather, right, where you can show it off as a new owner, right? You come in like, oh my God, I would love to have people sit around this kitchen, right? I have room, and now what do we have? We have cooking shows. We have, if you go on social media, everybody's showing you how they can make this and that, and what do we do as end users, right? We watch out. Oh, I'd like to try that at home. We'd like to do this, and things like that. So definitely the kitchen is where you'll get your biggest return for your money. Then of course the bathrooms after that. For me, I think kitchen and the floors are a huge one. I think that the main living area floors are big, because if you have a beautiful kitchen but the floors don't match, right, you have a disconnect. So unfortunately, I feel like even though you're putting money in the kitchen, the floors have to match what you're displaying.
You have to tie it
kitchen
together.
was. Yeah. It's like having a nice arrangement at a department store, right, where they have the mannequin and they have this beautiful dress and jewelry, but then like the floor where the mannequin is sitting is ugly, right? People are going, oh my God, that's hideous. Why do they do that? It's dirty, right? You got to have a display. You got to have something to display the kitchen, and I think the flooring is very important.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what if I'm in the scenario where I want to get top dollar for my home,
Okay.
And however, I want to sell it quick and I don't want to be sitting at my home not putting it on the market for X amount of months so I can renovate. If I have like a 2 to 3 month timeline where I'm like, I need or want to get on the market, then what are some renovations that I could do squeezed into that time?
Definitely painting. I would say painting is something you can do quick, because you can do it within a few days. One of the things that we do with our concierge services, if you're not going to do the renovation, is we come in and we clean up, do landscaping out in front, right? Clean it up. People don't realize when somebody pulls up to a house, it's that curb appeal, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't want to spend the money on new garage doors or new front doors, or you're not doing windows and you're not doing roof, you're not doing the major stuff, painting could be a quick and easy fix. Whether you're painting the exterior of the house, which does take some time, could take a week. But if you don't want to do that, you could just clean up, do pressure washing. If the paint's still good and it's a nice color, do pressure washing. That takes a day. We bring a gardener, and we clean up the landscaping. We clean up the planters. We make the house look very presentable. So when somebody pulls up, that's the first emotion they get.
Yeah.
Because if you think of a house, right, and you pull up and it doesn't look real nice in the front, you're walking through there already looking for things to complement what you have up front, right? So whether it's it's an old, dilapidated, maybe dirty house. You're walking in thinking, okay, that's what I'm looking for. My brain is looking for,
Dirty
because it didn't,
things.
yeah, because it didn't give me that really good feeling. When you pull up and you see this beautiful manicured home that's been well taken care of, that's what you expect to see on the inside.
Yeah.
If you expect to see it, you're going to find it.
Yeah.
Right. So painting, I think, would be pressure washing, painting, gardening. The other thing that we do, it's, believe it or not, it's small, but it's huge returns, and it's cleaning the windows.
Yeah.
We bring a professional company cleaner that takes out the screens, cleans them up. You'd be surprised when you're sitting in that living room as a buyer and you look out the window, you don't realize that you're seeing dirty. It just looks dirty, right? And your brain says, oh, this house needs work. Right. So we want to make sure that it's super clean so they can see right out.
Yeah.
What else do we do outside? Landscaping, cleaning of the windows, a little bit of painting. And then indoors is we will come in, and again, a little bit of painting, a little bit of touch up, maybe fixing some knobs. Some of the high traffic areas where the client might see, we want to try to make sure that the doorknobs work. Little things like that we could fix up. And then the last thing we do prior to staging is we bring a professional house cleaner, right, to come in and clean the house like thoroughly. Do the bathrooms, do the kitchen, do the floors. Little things. You'd be surprised. The other day I was showing a house, and it was a big house, 7,000 square foot house, $8 million. And we're walking through, and the client, we were representing the buyer, and the buyer pointed to us. He goes, oh my God, look at all the spider webs, right? This beautiful house, and it was well maintained, but whoever's doing the cleaning wasn't, and we're talking in rails behind couches that were behind like a wrought iron rail that they had for a theater room. And it was interesting because it really didn't, it wasn't indicative of what the house looked like, but it was the one thing that the buyer saw. Right. And when they see that, they're like turned off by it a little bit. So that's the one thing that we do come in with a professional house cleaner, because the owner probably never saw that, because as an owner, you go into a room with, I would just say with reason, right? You go into a room with, you're going to do something, whether you're going to this room to pick something up or you're going to go get your kid. As a buyer, you're going into the room to look at the whole room. As an owner who lives there, right, you're not going into a room and start admiring everything that you have in that room. So you might miss little things like a little ring on the table or spider web, like in this case.
Yeah.
So that's why we bring a professional house cleaning service to take care of all those things that a buyer might see that the owner doesn't see because they live there regularly. You'd be surprised, you point things out like, oh my God, I didn't see that, right? As an owner, because they're not looking for it, right? It's not, they're living there. Their whole purpose of being at home is to sleep, to get ready, to live with the family, to be with the family, to spend time with their loved ones, not to look at, spider webs, or not to look at dust that might be accumulating in a blind, right? But as a buyer, what do? You walk in and you're, oh, look at these blinds, they're really nice. And all of a sudden you see how dirty they are. So, so that's the one thing we'll do inside, is we bring a professional cleaning crew to do everything. And of course, touch up painting. If we can, if there's certain walls that need a little bit of sprucing up, or if our designer says, hey, all the walls here are white, let's paint this blue or green or whatever that color might be. We paint a particular wall as an accent. So for instance, you take this room, right? You have these 4 walls. It's easy to paint this wall, right? There's no fixtures, there's nothing on it. So we can come in and paint this, and all of a sudden gives the room a different look, different feel. Yeah.
Well, to sum it up, seems like you should take that extra time and money and energy to do it, because
absolutely,
it's going to make your house pop and sell for more.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, thank you for your time today, Pablo.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. To you, the viewers out there, it's an enjoyment of ours to do this, to have these conversations, and to help you guys. Seriously, if you have any sort of real estate questions, reach out on either our Instagrams, our phone number, and emails in the descriptions. We would love to help you, even if it's just about feedback for this podcast, something
anything, or even questions. I don't know if they reach out with questions.
Yeah.
We'd be happy to answer them at a on a future podcast or anything like that.
We really just want to serve and help people.
Absolutely.
So help us by helping you. So you guys have a great rest of your day. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.